International politics today looks different than it did 30 years ago. Since the 2000s, major powers have played less of a role in the management of international conflicts. This has led rising powers to strategically pursue active peacekeeping policies to advance their status in global governance. Rising powers are defined as status-seeking actors who are participating in an evolving international order. They want to appear as peace brokers in both regional and international crises. And while this has led to new mechanisms of prevention, mediation, and adjudication, many rising powers rely on different conflict management mechanisms to criticize the current Western-dominated international order. One way rising powers do this is by creating alternative institutions to compete with major powers. For example, the establishment of the New Development Bank by BRIC states demonstrates how Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa were willing to challenge existing global financial institutions dominated by traditional powers. Similarities across cases show how rising powers use the creation of new institutions to demonstrate their military, political, or economic power. Additionally, every rising power has an evolving conflict management strategy over time as a result of changing priorities and shifts in the international order. With that being said, different rising powers utilize different conflict management mechanisms depending on factors such as culture, history, region, and interests. To demonstrate these commonalities and differences, we'll focus on three separate cases. The first and one of the most well-known examples of a rising power is China, whose role in international conflict management has been changing over the years. With high levels of role adaptation and the hope of establishing alternative and deeper partnerships in trade, development, the environment, and security at regional and global levels, China has been essential in the creation of alternative institutions like the New Development Bank. This is an alternative to the US-led World Bank and the IMF and is designed to boost infrastructure funding in emerging economies. Their goal is to create a parallel global investment institution where developing countries have a greater influence while also criticizing the existing institutions as being too rigid and slow. Even rising powers that are more democratic and Western-oriented may break with their Western allies on security and geopolitical issues. Turkey has been more selective and has gradually become more of a regional than global conflict management actor. They've used a mixed approach. In regional conflicts, when their national interests are under threat, they've acted independently, using coercive conflict management mechanisms. However, because peacekeeping also requires a multilateral approach, they've also been cooperative. For example, Turkey used both bilateral and multilateral strategies in the recent conflict in Syria, which originally broke out in 2011. They used diplomatic and military mechanisms to prevent regional spread of the conflict, and in 2017, they established an ad hoc coalition with other regional players, Russia and Iran. They launched the Astana talks to help negotiate an end to the Syrian conflict. These talks formalized discussions between players who backed a number of armed groups involved on the ground in Syria. This platform was intended to start preliminary negotiations outside the UN framework. This was a major symbolic achievement for Russia, who was trying to derive legitimacy from relations with Turkey while also sidelining the United States in the process. The leadership summits that were held between Russia, Turkey, and Iran were highly visible and were designed to signal to the rest of the world that these players were decisive in Syria because they were the only ones willing to take significant risks and use military force to shape political outcomes. In addition, in 2017, Turkey deployed troops to a military base in Qatar, and in early 2020, the Turkish parliament approved official intervention in the Libyan conflict. This all demonstrates Turkey's regional approach to conflict management. Lastly, Brazil began to increase their global peace-building activities in the early 2000s. They increased their peacekeeping deployments, and they took a leadership role on peace-building issues, openly seeking reforms to democratize the global order and reduce dependence on an overly militarized, Western-dominated approach to global peace and security. They were vocal about their non-traditional approaches and sought to establish a developmental, non-interventionist reputation to demonstrate their solidarity with other former colonies. Self-interest-based preferences are likely to be one of the driving factors determining their approach. While they've been able to promote peaceful resolutions as a third-party actor, they've done so while preserving their own economic and political interests. Each of these examples demonstrates how various rising powers have responded differently to the evolving nature of international conflicts. They create new institutions to challenge the status quo, their engagement in an international forum allows them to demonstrate their power, and approaches can be regional or global in scope. We look forward to continuing this discussion with you in class. Thank you.